Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, President, Founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, and I'm the host of Simple Night Presents. Today's conversation is about something very real, how AI actually works when it meets the complexity of government, municipalities, and real communities. Our guest today is a good friend of mine, Solito Reyes, has been working at the intersection of technology, government, and public sector execution, where innovation has to deliver results, not just ideas. Through hands-on involvement with SimpleNet AI implementation in the Philippines, Solito has helped municipalities modernize how they deliver services, connect systems, and respond to citizens, often with limited resources and high expectations. What makes Solito's experience especially valuable is a focus on practical deployment, integrating AI into existing municipal workflows, building trust with the public officials, and ensuring that technology enhances accountability rather than replacing human judgment. In a region where local governments are moving faster than national systems, Solito's work offers important lessons on how AI can be deployed responsibly, efficiently, and at scale, creating measurable improvements in service delivery and citizen engagement. And with that, I'd like to bring my friend Solito on board. Hi, Solito.
Gary, how are you? Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. So for the audience out there, let's talk a little bit about the experience. Can you briefly describe your role and how you became involved with Simple Night's AI work in the Philippines and why it's such an incredibly interesting opportunity?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I've been with SimpleNight now for over 11 years, 12 years. And, when Mark and I were thinking about the most cutting edge strategy that we can employ, well, artificial intelligence was an easy call. And then it came about, well, how can we best utilize this? What are some business models that we can attack, and what are some opportunities out there? And the first thing that we thought of, well, we're going to go through this global expansion effort anyway. Is there some markets where we can create some really great AI tools that could be greatly utilized? And after some careful considerations, well, it was like, okay, let's go out to Asia. And since I'm Filipino and had a lot of relatives in the space, and I already had some family involved in government, it made sense that, okay, would you be interested in expanding out into the Philippines? I said, yeah, absolutely. I would love to move out here and be a part of that expansion. So yeah, I ended up here in Manila, been here for 3 years now. It's been amazing. And I got to learn firsthand, the way that AI can really transform government. Philippines is a very traditional place. They're behind the technology curve, and I'm really proud to be able to bring, all this stuff, all this technology that I've been involved in for all these years, and to help, give back. So, the first thing I did was I just dove straight into it. Started meeting some government officials, started talking about, how AI can transform what they do, and it's amazing because pretty much the whole country runs on a lot of analog processes, a lot of analog services. There's still a lot of paper and filing and folders. You hear about a lot of these disasters of fires that catch place in some of these municipal halls, and all their records get lost. So I thought, wow, this is really a home run. I mean, I knew this was going to be a great opportunity, but it's really wide open. So yeah, the first thing we did is we started looking at, all the things that they could really need. The biggest thing is just straight up digitization. Okay, we have that, right? We have a full B2B2C digitization platform. They need data management. All right, that's easy. We've got the data scientists and we've got all the architects that can help in that regard. They needed some apps to help with, managing information, business insight, a lot of, some practical apps like paying for, taxes and municipal payments. So we said, okay, let's start selling a full blown, B2B to C digitization AI platform, and it's just been tremendous. So the opportunity's been wide open. I think, we're going to sign, I think, like close to 30, 40 municipalities just in this month alone. So, the momentum.
That is really good, Solito. And when you're doing this, when you're down, so one of the things you look at it, they've got these disconnected systems. They don't have the real-time data. They got limited staff. The process is dependent on paper, manual approvals, these silos. If you look at it though, you're changing everything. You're making this a lot faster. So how much, if you look at it, how much more efficient is the system once we put SIMPLENIGHT in compared to what it was a year ago for them? How much of an improvement can they expect? And what kind of customer service, how do the customers respond to it?
Yeah, it's amazing. From what I've read, when you start doing transformation in these developing markets, you're going to see immediately just off the bat 35%, but I'm seeing probably 50 to even much higher, close to, it's going to be almost 100% turnaround, because
Wow.
you go from these paper forms that are a nightmare, right? When a customer runs into something they don't quite understand, they have to go wait in line to meet an attendant, right? And that line might take you 45 minutes to an hour to get in front of them. They answer your question. You go back to the form only to run into the next question that you don't quite understand. So you end up doing this, and the form is like 30, could be 30, 35, 40 steps. So you end up wasting 2 or 3 days just to complete this one form. So just on, improving and streamlining customer service issues alone, we cut down that waiting time. We created a little tool for one of the real estate agencies here where you just ask a question and it gives you the exact answer from the database of the agency. And, when we first did this demonstration, the guy that was running it was like, wow, I knew AI was efficient, but this is really amazing. It's very specific, and he couldn't believe how contextually accurate it was. And then he was testing me. He's like, this has to be fake. He's like, ask it how much it costs. And it's, within milliseconds, right? It told him how much it cost.
Get him to believe that it's real because it's such a transformation. Is that
it's like magic, I'm always trying to put myself in their place. And it's like, wow, what they had before was this kiosk that if you asked a question, it worked like a search engine, right? So all it did was it gave you all these links. And it was like, that's not the answer to anything. So you'd have to click the link and you'd still have to read, for like 10 minutes just to see if it answered your question. A lot of times it didn't. You just ended up into this rabbit hole of search. So he was amazed that that's how good AI is. And we kind of did this thing where we took an extra step. We changed the language to Tagalog. There's a really good LLM out there for Tagalog. And when I did that, he was just in shock. He was like, oh my goodness. He's like, this thing talks Tagalog better than me. The grammar's percent is 100%. And even when you mumble, its ability to really capture the words that you're using is really tremendous, so everybody's always blown away. Just on customer service alone, like 35%, but I'm seeing a full 180 degrees transformation, just cutting the waiting times just to get an answer is just really helpful for all these constituents.
Well, when you deal with the government, a lot of times, it's going to be a hassle. It's not going to be so easy. And so having tools that are hyper personalized for you. So where do municipalities struggle the most in technology, skills, governance, or trust? What do you think?
They really just need a whole architectural overhaul. So, I understand where they have problems. They have computer science schools, right? They have software engineers, but because government deals in such critical information, they're not willing to just take some kid who graduated with a PhD and say, hey, let's transform everything. Because they're kind of like, oh, I don't know. You don't really have a background. There's no history here. And the only people that have those kind of skills, right, you'd have to hire someone from the outside, someone from another country. But then again, these governments, they don't quite trust a lot of foreigners. So I'm the ideal scenario. I'm Filipino. I was born here, but I grew up in the U.S. So when I come in, not only do I have the technology and the solution, but I have the background, right? That has some credibility. My father and my mom were part of that medical wave that came from the Philippines to the U.S. So that story is amazing. I've always wanted to come here. My father, before he passed, he says, I want you to go back and give back when you get a chance. So this is a great opportunity for me. I'm taking 40 years of IT development and shortcutting it for them. They're going to go from an analog service to artificial intelligence. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. And there's a lot of parts of the world that's like this. A lot of people think, especially if you're American, you think the whole world is cutting edge, and no, there's still parts of the world that are really behind. Yeah. And, I feel lucky that I'm that conduit that can bring all this technology to the Philippines.
How different is AI readiness at the local level versus the national government? Do you see a difference? And who's more willing to accept it? The local governments or the national infrastructure?
Yeah, you're going to be surprised, but the local mayors really get it. And the problem with the national level, the federal level, is that, okay, they get it, but they're just dealing with mostly, paper pushing type stuff. But when you get to the municipal level, right, the mayors, they really get it because they're actually dealing with all of the people. They're dealing with the information. They're dealing with property. They're dealing with finances. So the mayor, even though they're at the lowest level, they're the most important level because they're the ones that are actually signing the agreements, and they're the ones that can transform and control, right, their jurisdiction. So the mayors really get it. When you get to the federal level, the problem is the bureaucracy just kills them, right? They need approvals from this person, approval from this person, approval from this person. So all these people in power are much older guys, guys that would have been way older than my father.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a educational gap there. So while you're pitching, you're actually having to teach also. They know that it's important, but they don't quite grasp the details of how it can transform. The mayors, they already know what their problems are, right? They already know that they've got a lot of deficiencies. They already know that they're having trouble creating reports. They're already having trouble tracking finances. The most simplest problem for the mayors is simply illegal businesses, right? As a business in these municipalities, you're supposed to get a permit. You're supposed to register. But there's a lot of companies that operate in cash. They don't report their income. So they can't get that tax revenue, right? So we help them. We say, hey, you have to be on this system, right, to be able to benefit from what we offer. If you're not in a system, you don't get exposure. If you're not in a system, you can't get searched. And if you can't get searched, you don't exist. So if you don't exist, you're not going to generate any income. So the mayors love that. They get it. And we work hand in hand in, implementing a really nice customized platform for whatever their needs are.
So when you what surprised you most about the municipality's reaction to AI? And, you said that it was like magic. So do they go from skeptical to believers overnight? Does it happen that fast once they see these results? Is it because it's a foreign concept, right? It's something that they haven't seen before.
Yeah, these generative AI tools that we demonstrate blows everyone away. Like they know AI is out there and, they've seen all the movies and stuff. But when you see a real live demonstration, of something that is applicable to them, we do both a booking, we do e-commerce, we do some business insight type stuff. And they just can't believe it. Like sometimes they're a little skeptical. They think we came in there and we're pulling off a little scam somehow. And they're like, is there someone in the background like talking, or is someone typing this out? I said, no. I said, tell you what, I'll prove it to you. Let's reset the chat. You pick a topic or you pick a destination. And I said, I'll let you talk, and once they see it, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Right. So they're like, okay, let's put this together. And the momentum is finally there. The momentum is finally there. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it in the news, but there's been a lot of really controversial politics in the news going on in the Philippines. Like a lot of these high-end officials are getting accused of corruption. So we've kind of tied that into our marketing. It's like, listen, if you want to sell transparency to your constituents, this is the way that you do it. 100% tracking, 100% tracking of every penny spent in your municipality. This is how you do it. And then that information is going to help you in the long run because it's going to help you with your decision making, right? You're going to have data-driven decision making. There's no guessing anymore. And you're probably going to find some inefficiencies or things that are doing well that you probably never even noticed because your information just isn't that accurate, right? So we're giving them a means to finally make some really big, critical, and proper and well-made decisions.
So as you're going down through these municipalities, what kind of measurable improvements do they see? Like reduced processing times, lower operational costs. What do they see in their stuff? Wow, this is amazing. Customer service to their constituents.
Yeah, customer service is probably the most visible one that you see. Once you kind of put something out there and you see how easy it is to use and how quickly those lines reduce, right? When you're trying to get questions answered, that one's probably the one that for them is very easy to see, right? The other stuff is a little more intellectual, a little more cerebral, data-driven metrics is, it takes a little bit of time, right? You've got to see a lot of things being compared. But the effect that it has on streamlining customer service is big.
So when you look at the benefits, Solito, are there any unexpected benefits like morale? I mean, the staff probably gets, they get pounded on so much, it probably makes them feel better because they're servicing the customers better, right? They're not buried in this manual work. They can work on higher value tasks. Do they see that? And do they buy into it, or how does it make them feel?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, right? At first, a lot of people are scared of AI. They say, oh my goodness, is this going to take my job? But when we come in and we meet all these boards, they kind of see it a different way, right? The AI helps them get things that are repetitive out of the way, and they can start focusing on things that are more critical, that are more high value, right? So that's a smart way of looking at it because they're already working hard. There's already a lot of stuff to do. These municipalities are crazy busy. We have municipalities that have 800, 900,000 citizens, the size of, a small town, right, in the US. So they're just overwhelmed with processing paperwork, getting to know people, all kinds of stuff. So we assure them that AI is not going to take your job because the stuff that you're doing is a mix of physical and intellectual, right? You can use the AI to help you gain back some time so you can focus on the more critical stuff. So that has helped us a lot, right? Because we don't have, AI robots and, it's not a lot of physical work. So we frame it that way and they get it because just answering questions with your constituents. Imagine you have almost 1 million people in your city and everyone's got a question about something, right? Every day, the lines build up at 8 a.m. It doesn't slow down till 5 p.m. So, if you can show them that they can be more efficient, it's an easy sell.
How do you, their questions could come up about things like privacy and control. How do you address those? And, do you talk about transparency? You talk about data ownership, those kind of things. What do you do? Because I'm sure, if they don't understand AI, those kind of questions are going to come up.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, as a company, we have to comply with all of those international standards to begin with, right? SOC 2, GDPR, PCI, OS2, all of them. So whenever we're asked that question, we have a security site that we direct them to, and we'll say, listen, we are compliant with all of these, right? These are all international standards. And if they're good for the US, they're good for Europe, obviously it'll be good. It'll be good for here. And, it's just really about respect. We have to be, because, if word gets out that, we're not doing our jobs, then, how are we going to get any business? You know what I mean? So that one's not too difficult question to answer. And, once you kind of explain that to people, that there's these international standards, they say, oh, wow, okay. Because even their concerns, are not as organized and structured as these, GDPR and PCI and OS2 and SOC 2 that's been going on for US for years, right? So they quickly reassure them with our own compliance and standards.
So how do you balance automation with human oversight? Because I'm sure that comes up too, right? People are afraid of losing their jobs. How do you balance that and explain to them, talk about the speed and consistency, and in a hybrid model?
Yeah, that's another point that we bring up. Because you have AI, you've essentially invented new roles. So, the people who are very smart, people that have a technical background, they love it, because this is for them. Yes, this is something new that I'm going to embrace. I want to learn this. So, hey, yeah, bring it in. If you need someone to be the administrator, I want to be the one that takes that job. So we haven't had difficulty of working with these municipalities. Even they have these programs, right? They're called OJTs. This is where the municipalities work with their local colleges in getting interns. We get swamped, with people. Yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to learn. I want, do you need administrators? I'm really good at software. Yeah, there's no pushback. It's a really good balance. Like I said, we sell it in that this helps create jobs, and this helps your municipality become a little bit more technically sound, and you're going to get that reputation that you're embracing technology in the future and AI. The mayors love that. Then it kind of spins back into like, oh, this is going to help me in my next campaign. Absolutely. You're embracing the future now. Listen, we're more than happy to give you full credit. Just say it's your idea, and we came along and just so happened to be the service provider, that offers it. But yeah, all this stuff just all around, it's an upward cycle of positivity and production, all around.
So SimpleNight's growing all over the world. What are some of the lessons for the Philippines that apply globally? And that you're seeing, whether it's in the Middle East or in the US or Europe, what are some of those lessons that apply?
Yeah, the biggest thing, especially for the global business development group, is that culture is huge. You have to understand the cultural differences between all these different areas and countries that you're working with. And it's very true. There's a lot of little subtleties that you have to keep in mind, from the way that you conduct the meeting to some of the titles that you have to use. There's a lot of sir and ma'am. A lot of formality, but it's actually not formality. It's just a lot of respectful, references that people use in meetings. Knowing when to stop if someone were to ask you a question. Just little subtleties. Also, the way that you sell into these municipalities, it's definitely a lot different, than the US. You can actually do a walk-in, and you just have to know who to ask for. There's a lot of little things that we've learned that have made us a really great business. We've developed a really nice business team, and we've been able to figure all these little things out. And, I have people that can walk into a municipality, and within 2 hours, they'll be able to set up a demonstration with the mayor, within the next 7 to 10 days. That's how good we've gotten. Yeah. So the lesson there is know the subtleties of the market that you're dealing with, and have a local. I think what helps us here in the Philippines is that I'm Filipino, even though I'm an American, and just from the way I talk, they know that I'm an American. I'm still Filipino. I have the credibility to go in there and sell. It really helps. Have some locals that are on your sales team. That really helps. that's definitely something that helps here. And I'm
You
sure
know,
it helps in other markets as well.
we have leaders from all over the world that watch Simple Night Presents. So, what would be the first practical step for them, those city leaders that are interested in exploring AI? And should they look at one service first and try that? What steps should they take? Because they're afraid many times they don't want to make a mistake. But what should they do, and how do they get a hold of Simple Night?
Yeah, what I would do is I would say hired a really savvy internal person who has some software engineering background, has some computer science background, and don't be scared that they're going to be young. Just by the nature of it, that person is probably going to be a young person. Give him a shot. He's going to know about all these little intricacies, how all these services work. They're going to understand all the different platforms and all the different issues, privacy, everything. He's going to understand that. And if you have someone like that who can offer advice, you can now make an assessment of all these different vendors that will be coming to you, but ultimately in the end, you're going to work with a company that you trust, that you feel comfortable with, that sees the problems. I mean, listen, culturally also, there's a vast difference of cultural, just in terms of economics and geopolitics. You've got to still be sensitive about that too, right? You can't go in there assuming that everyone's left wing or right wing, right? You have to be very neutral, and you can't go in there, pushing whatever agenda you have. You have to understand the political makeup that's in front of you. And if you do a good job with that, it shouldn't be too difficult. We've been very lucky. We've been hiring a lot of these young kids that are like maybe 2 or 3 years out of school, and they got a lot of exposure working with a lot of American companies and doing a lot of hardcore work. So by the time we got them, they're already pretty seasoned. And you kind of get involved in these pipelines of talent. It's there, but like I said, you got to have someone who went to school with this stuff. Maybe you have 1 or 2 guys, right? Mm-hmm. And always make sure that they're in these meetings, when these technical vendors come in. Make a list of all the needs and requirements that you need fulfilled, and rely on these technically savvy kids to be able to assess whether they can, whether it's a good fit or not.
For those governments that are out there, what mistakes should governments avoid? Like over engineering, taking humans out of the process. What are there some guidance that you could give them of things not to do before it's a problem?
Yeah. So the one problem that we run into is heavy-handed lawyers. If there's one flaw in the process, it's these lawyers. You've got these lawyers that have had their job for, oh my goodness, how many years? 20 years. And they're still trying to make an assessment about us based on their old way of thinking, right? So I've noticed even some of the young guys, because the young guys are being trained under these guys. You need to really, instead of saying, hey, let me take a look at your contract. I don't like it. This is not proper. This is not proper. This is not proper. Sorry, we can't proceed with you guys. You know what? Work with us. Say, what do we have to change so that we can conform to what you're used to, right? Give us a shot. We've got really smart lawyers. We've got lawyers both in New York, and we have lawyers here. I'm sure we can figure out a way to meet where you think we're apart. But yeah, if there's one thing in the process that really annoys me the most, and a lot of these lawyers, they're not in the sales demonstrations. So by the time we have to talk to a lawyer, everything is so out of context. It's so out of whack, right? We almost have to resell them again. So that's really annoying. So I would say to all these municipalities, in every role, right, be open-minded. And when you're on the last stages with a technology company that you like, bring in those lawyers, bring in the people, that are required to sign off. Make sure they're in the meeting, because that really just slows things down when it's time to talk to the lawyer and he has no idea who we are. He doesn't know anything. never was in a meeting, and now we have to resell them at that very moment. Yeah, and he doesn't get the context of everyone being wowed right in the board meeting. He's all by himself. We're like in his little office, and we're trying to resell him on his little desk. It's not the same, right? So that's the part that really slows all this down. So municipalities, bring all the people who are stakeholders, check out these demonstrations, make sure everybody's all on the same page. That really helps a lot.
And so the value is just, the Aristotle said, the sum of the parts equal the whole, right? Where do you think the biggest opportunity is ahead in terms of for these municipalities with AI as a shared intelligence layer across all kinds of different services? What do you think, and how powerful is it when you tie this all together as one?
Yeah, the biggest opportunity that I see for these municipalities is just more accurate tracking. That is really like just stuff that's very fundamental. One of the ladies who runs the accounting departments for one of these municipalities, she pulled me aside and she's like, I waste 6 months out of my year just being able to do a year-end report. I was like, what? Wow. She's like, yes, because I have to pull paper from so many places.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
She's like, will you provide me a dashboard with every transaction, and will it summarize things for me? And can you sort it? I said, absolutely. In seconds. I said, this is the part that will really be beneficial to you and your department. And she says, oh my God, when July comes around, I really start to get worried, because that's when I know I have to start, because by December, I know the mayor's going to say to me, hey, do you have that report? And, she told me we have 12,000 businesses, in our municipality. I have to check first if I even have all their permits on record. If they filed last year, I got to see, if they filed this year. She's like, it's total madness. I have a team of 25 people that we have to process and, do all of this stuff. I said, wow, no, I'm going to make your life easy. You can redistribute that labor doing something more efficient, maybe, doing production analysis and streamlining and maybe redistributing your funds better. But yeah, I said, that's difficult. That's a task we're going to improve for you. Definitely.
When SIMPLENIGHT comes in, how different does how does it, when it's done right with SIMPLENIGHT, what does it look like for the municipalities? Yeah. Do they see, what do they see? What do they feel? And how does it look differently once it's deployed? It's just painting a picture of what they can expect.
Yeah, once it's fully deployed, I think the biggest thing for them is having that information that they are demanding instantaneously at their fingertips. If you see the movies about HAL, that's exactly what they want, right? We can render all of these charts and stuff in real time for them. The ability to have all of their vendors and merchants all in one system is also tremendous for them, because they've never had that before. They know, a small little island, they'll have about 1,400, vendors and merchants, but for them, it's just vendors and merchants on paper. And maybe when they walk down the street, they'll probably cross paths with maybe 30, 40 of them. But to be able to now visualize and see, the guy that sells shoes, the Sorry store that sells produce and milk, and know that they're all in one system is an amazing transformation, and it's all done in real time. For these administrators, that experience and the ability to have all that information at their fingertips is just really revolutionary. It saves so much time. I mean, when you go into the back end of these municipalities, and I've been invited and I see how this place works. There's hundreds of people literally just moving paper around. I talked to the accountant. He showed me these ledgers. they're about the size of of an encyclopedia. And I go, oh my goodness, She's like, if we have some discrepancies, imagine trying to go through all this, right?
I can't imagine. No wonder it takes 6 months to do things.
Yep. So that alone, also the relief of knowing that this information is secure, their biggest fear is fires. Fires hit the municipality, it's done. All the records are gone. And maybe they get lucky. Maybe they get lucky. They had some backup tape somewhere, or they had it on a CD or something. But fires is a huge enemy to these municipalities. They have all these different safes and stuff. And here's another crazy part: a lot of them still have local servers on-prem.
Really? That's amazing.
That's how back they are, and they were telling me how much they spend on these machines. And then I asked them, how old are those servers? And they're like 6, 7 years old. I'm like, they're going to die at any moment, right? The lifespan of those physical machines are like 5 years, and you're on your 7th, 8th year, and they're like, yeah, and then we spend a lot of money with the air conditioning, and we have these guys that are constantly fixing these machines. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, forget it. We're going to save you so much money. All this is going to be in the cloud now, and we're going to make sure that it's secure. You're going to have access to your data. It's always going to be up, and it's backed up instantaneously, and we can do, cross data site replication. Yeah. I mean, that alone too gives them some real assurance as well.
No, it's amazing. Solito, we're coming to the top of the show. Closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you one more time?
Yeah, just check us out at simplenight.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn, at Solito Reyes. Yeah, listen, a lot of people, there's a lot of practical ways that you can use AI. And I think for everybody, don't be scared about this whole Terminator thing. No. Listen, AI is a tool. Just remember that. Embrace it now so that you're not blindsided. If you embrace it, you're controlling it, right? You're managing the tool. You're applying it where it's needed. If you just sit there and blow it off and think, we don't need it, it's gonna blindside you. And then that's when, things get very difficult, because now you're not in control. But embrace it now so that you can control it. You can apply it as you need it. You can customize it as you need it. It's a good time, and you'll create some new jobs, and you'll also make people proud about what they're doing, right? If they know their municipality is cutting edge, they're going to be more happier in their jobs, knowing that they're going to be more efficient. They have some tools that are going to help them.
It's one other thing. I had a conversation with a large insurance company a couple of weeks ago, and they said to me, we were talking about AI, and they said, well, we don't need to do it right now. And I said, and this is a pretty large insurance company, really large actually. And I said, just remember the dinosaurs. I said, dinosaur, because nothing good's going to happen. If you don't embrace it, if you don't embrace it, it's going to be very difficult to compete over the next 3 to 5 years. In fact, a lot of those companies, a lot of those municipalities would be so far behind, they won't be able to catch up. And those people that are elected officials won't have their jobs because they'll be that far behind. They won't be able to provide the services at the level. How can you compete when something's 1,000 times faster? It's impossible.
Yeah, it's just moving so fast. For every day that you ignore it and you don't embrace it, that's another day you're behind. And that's going to compound, right? As the technology gets better and faster, it gets harder and harder to cut the line. You really have to think it through, make a list of all the things that you want solved and bring it in now. You don't have to spend billions of dollars like these big guys do, just enough that you can control, how you want to apply it, and you'll see some ROI. Definitely.
That's great, Solito. Well, to all of you out there, thanks for joining one more time. And thanks to all of you. I'm closing in on 1,600 podcasts and millions of views all over the world. Check out Simple Night. Simple Night makes your life a lot better for those municipalities that are out there that want to serve their customers better, serve their clients better, serve their constituents. Check it out wherever you are, because if you don't embrace it, you may become a dinosaur. So thanks, Solito, for taking your time. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I will be back to you again soon with another exciting edition of Simple Night Presents. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Thanks, Solito.
Gary, thank you. Take care.